So you've probably seen bits and pieces of it on Twitter or any other social media outlet, but ESPN dropped their top 100 all-time MLB players, and it's getting talked so much because it is horrible. So in this video, we're going to react to ESPN's top 100 list, and I'm telling you, it's just laughable. People actually got paid to write this shit. So starting at number 100, we got Barry Larkin. He was almost 300 here, 371 average, play Gold Glove defense. I have no problems with Barry Larkin being there. Phil Niekro, little bit of a different story. Wasn't a great anything too special. He had almost a 500 win-loss record. Obviously, that doesn't play a factor in how good a player is. 3.35 years, very respectable. Did not get a lot of strikeouts, but he was a knuckleballer. But he was good. Hall of Fame worthy player, but definitely not top 100. Jim Thome here, I honestly thought he should be higher. He had over 600 home runs. He mashed. He was one of the all-time greats when it came to hitting home runs. He should be moved up. We got Adrian Beltre, Charlie Gehringer. There are a lot of these players that I don't even really know because they gave respect to a lot of players that played in the early 1900s and just ranked them just terribly, terribly high. Duke Snider probably should be a little bit higher. He was great during his prime. Bryce Harper's a little surprising. I think it's a little premature, honestly. Don't get me wrong. By the end of the day, Bryce Harper's going to be a Hall of Famer. He's going to probably be a top 25 all-time player. But if he were to retire right now, he doesn't have a lot of the milestones that you need for Hall of Fame. He doesn't have 300 home runs. He's still under 1,000 RBIs. He's only got 1,300-ish hits, 40.1 WAR. That's great. He's only 28 years old. But saying he's a top 100 player right now, maybe in his prime, absolutely. By the end of his career, definitely top 25, top 20 all-time player. But right now, I think it's kind of hard to keep him on this list over some others. John Smoltz, he pitched well in relief, was a great starter all around. The Doc could argue, if you're going off a pitcher's prime, he could be a little bit higher. Prime Roy Halladay was amazing during his heyday with the Toronto Blue Jays and then Philadelphia Phillies. You got Ryan Sandberg, 91. Pudge, 90. Shoeless Joe Jackson. If you have not heard our story about Shoeless Joe and how he got kicked out of baseball for basically gambling issues that he had no idea about, his whole team basically in the World Series was gambling. He was not the smartest person. He didn't really know what he was getting into. Agreed to everything. Tried his ass off in the World Series. They still lost. But he got in trouble for a bunch of shit. So he got kicked out of baseball. You see here, he only played for, 12 years? He could have gone a lot more. Willie Stargell. But yeah, definitely check out the Black Sox scandal. Very interesting. Willie Stargell, definitely a big power hitter for the Pirates back in the day. Carlton Fisk. I have no issues with that. Roberto Alomar. Jim Palmer. Paul Mulder. A lot of these players I don't have a problem with. It's once we get to the lower parts that they're really bad. Roy Campanella, he could have been so goddamn good. But you see here, he only played 9 seasons because, of course, they had the Negro Leagues and everything back in the day. But if he played a full, 15 to 20 year career, his numbers would be so much better, especially at the catcher position. Eddie Collins, I don't know a ton about him, but 333 average with 47 home runs, 1,300 RBIs, was that 124 WAR? His WAR was good, over 3,000 hits. Okay. Mike Piazza, arguably the best catcher of all time, 308 career average, 427 home runs, 1,300 RBIs. Robin Yount, honestly, dude, I'm a Brewer fan, diehard. Robin Yount's the best player in franchise history, but he is way too high. I don't even know if he should be on this top 100 list. He did get over 3,000 hits, played decent defense, but he wasn't, amazing at anything. I'm thinking, okay, all-time great, top 100, got to put Robin Yount in there. Hank Greenberg, Chipper Jones should be a lot higher to me. He's arguably the best switch hitter of all time. I think he has the most home runs by a switch hitter with 468, a 303 average, and over 400 on base, a 930 OPS. He was amazing. What's he bet? Is Mickey Mantle the no-bring best switch hitter ever? Yeah, okay. Mickey Mantle is definitely ahead of him in terms of switch hitter. Then Jones is leading candidate for designation among National League hitters. Mantle was a childhood hero of Jones' father, as it turned out. Jones, who was part of the 12 Atlanta Espn'S, they didn't really get into it much. Vladdy should be a lot higher too, man. 318 average, 380 on base percentage, 450 home runs, had an absolute cannon of an arm in the outfield, and obviously has nothing to do with how good he was, but it doesn't matter with where that pitch was hit, he could hit it. He literally hit pitches that bounced into the plate. Vladdy was so fun to watch. And this is what I mean by they just gave players that played so long ago a lot of credit on this. 334 average, that's great, but we're seeing players that put up similar averages in it back in nowadays where pitchers are throwing a lot harder. Imagine the pitchers pitching in the 1870s. You weren't facing anybody good. Baseball was just kind of getting under its belt. You were basically facing janitors. The hits and everything are dope, but at some point you gotta discredit them for the era they played. They were good in their era, but there's no way Camp Anson is better than Vladdy or Chipper Jones. No way. Rock Crew, just no power, man. 92 home runs. He hit for a good average and everything. I'd bump him down a little bit. Still top 100 player, but I don't know about that. Juan Marichal's interesting because he always had a good ERA. He got a lot of wins, but he did not strike a lot of batters out whatsoever, where you see some of the fireballers that had huge success, especially nowadays, the Jacob deGroms, the Corbin Burnses, the Zach Wheelers. They all got big strikeout numbers. Juan Marichal just did it with finesse, kind of like a Greg Maddux. Willie McCovey, 521 home runs with a 370 on base. The dude was just a very feared hitter for the Giants. I could argue he'd be a little bit higher, but I'm okay with this. Justin Verlander. End of the day, I will say Justin Verlander definitely should be in the top 100. Probably closer to the top 60. Justin Verlander, especially in his prime, so dominant. He's still in his prime when he pitches. I mean, shit. LK line, Harmon Killebrew, 573 home runs with a 380 on base. That's respectable. Ozzie Smith, in my opinion, is one of the more overrated players in baseball. And it's not just because I hate the Cardinals. It's because the guy literally was an average hitter, but is the best defender of all time. Granted, it's a hard discussion. Should he be in the Hall of Fame solely based off his defense? Maybe. Top 100? I don't know about that. He had 262, 337 on base, and it doesn't even show his home runs, but he did not hit a lot of home runs. I don't even think he had 100 home runs in his career. I don't think he had even close to 100 home runs in his career. He had 28 home runs in his career. Yeah, he hit for zero power. He was all defense. Did have 580 stolen bases with 2460 hits. So, respectable there at least. Manny Ramirez at 68. That is laughable to me. Manny Ramirez is a top 30 player of all time. 312 average, 411 on base, over 550 home runs with 1,800 RBIs, 2,500 hits. He played terrible defense, but there was nobody in his prime that hit as well as Manny Ramirez did. The guy was electric. Burke Robinson reminds me a lot of Ozzie Smith in terms of just pure defense, but he at least provided a little bit of value hitting-wise. I'd bump him down a little bit, but 6'7" at least. I'm okay with this more than I am okay with the guy who hit 28 home runs. Nowadays, you have 20 players hitting more than that in a season than this guy did in his career. Cal Ripken Jr. Cal Ripken, he was good. He played good defense. Obviously, he could hit a little bit. He had freaking played in how many games? 3,500 straight games? No. 21-31. I wasn't even close on that. So that's okay. Max Scherzer's late 30s, and he's still putting up numbers, dude. That guy's going to go down as one of the best pitchers of all time, hands down. Eddie Matthews, he hits dawn shots, 521 home runs, 376 on base. And then we move on to the guy that just got in the Hall of Fame, where Barry Bonds, Roger Clemens, Curt Schilling, guys like that did not. For steroids, yeah, David Ortiz was linked up with steroids at one point. He made the Hall of Fame. 6'3", though, that is too low. like Big Papi, like Manny Ramirez, those two in the same lineup, they were some of the most feared players in baseball during their time. 541 home runs, 1,700 RBIs. He also hit for average, got on base. There was nothing he could not do besides play defense. He was a designated hitter, so I think he gets docked a little bit for that. But if you get docked for playing designated hitter, players like Brooke Robinson and Ozzie Smith should get docked a little bit because they can't hit. Mel Ott, 6'2". I'm okay with that. He played in a much, much earlier time, but the guy put up numbers, 511 home runs. We got Yaz. His grandson's doing really well with the Giants right now. Whitey Ford. Yeah, I definitely think Big Papi should be over a lot of these guys. Miggy at 59 to me, I don't agree with. He's hitting .310 his career, 387, 500 home runs, 1,800 RBIs. He's going to get his 3,000th hit later this year. The thing about Miggy is prime Miggy, just aren't many better. He put up a triple crown season a couple years ago. And if you look down here, you got, where is he? Clayton Kershaw at 52 is just laughable. But I'll get to that in a second. You have Frank Thomas, I believe, at 49 is where they ranked Frank Thomas. And if you look their numbers up, Miggy's going to beat Frank Thomas in home runs, RBIs, batting average, everything. Their numbers are very similar for the most part. I think Miggy is a little bit better, so I won't rank him much ahead of Frank Thomas. But you got to move him up to like 45 or something like that. And then, why the hell is Clayton Kershaw not in the top 50? Clayton Kershaw is a top 5 starting pitcher of all time, in my opinion. Like, I think Pedro is insanely high on this list. I like Kershaw more than I like Pedro Martinez. Whether a lot of people believe that or not, people probably won't for the most part. But Clayton Kershaw definitely needs to be in the top 20 at the very least. Moving on to the top 50, starting out with Bob Feller. There is zero chance Bob Feller is better than Clayton Kershaw in any way. Dude, what? Like, I know it's only 2 spots difference, but what is Bob Feller better at than Clayton Kershaw, man? And here's Frank Thomas. Yeah, so he was 49. Numbers very, very similar to what Miggy has, but Miggy's going to break everything that Frank Thomas has. He's going to have more home runs, already has more RBIs, already has more hits, better batting average. Honestly, it shouldn't even be up for debate. Why is Frank Thomas ranked ahead of Miggy? It makes no sense to me. Warren Spahn, he's up there. Ichiro at 46. I definitely think he should be in the top 30 at the very least, especially when you look at some of the guys in the top 10 who were just slap hitters who hit for a high average. Ichiro, if he played his entire season, like his entire career, and didn't spend the first 9 years over in Japan, he'd probably have the all-time hits record. And on top of that, he came over to the U.S. in his first season, won MVP. A few years later, he also broke the all-time hits record in a season with 262. Who knows when that'll get touched again? 3,000 hits, and he spent the first 9 years of his career over in Japan. He played great defense, was great in the base pass, and could flat out hit. Ichiro needs to be in the top 30 for me at least, especially over guys like Wade Boggs and everything. They look at the average. Okay, Wade Boggs had a little bit better of an average, but I don't know, man. I question it. Tony Gwynn, 338, 388 on base. Tony Gwynn got George Brett, the Kansas City great, here at 43. I've seen a lot better players ranked lower. Like Manny Ramirez and Big Papi should not be behind George Brett in terms of all time. Nolan Ryan is way down here. I honestly thought Nolan Ryan would be at least top 30. But no, they exclude him. He threw electric. I believe he has the most all-time no-hitters. He has the most all-time strikeouts. I believe he's all-time strikeouts leader, but also walks. Who cares? Cy Young has the most wins and the most losses, yet they have a reward named after him. He has the lowest hit rate of hits allowed per 9 innings in history. They state all the facts of why Nolan Ryan is amazing, yet they rank him so low. 42, Satchel Paige is not better than Nolan Ryan or Kershaw. I'm excited to see some of the players they have ranked over him. Jimmy Fox is one of those players that I feel does not get talked enough about, and maybe it's just because I love him in MLB The Show, but dude, the guy could just hit just hit with anybody he went against. Like, he was so good. Triple Crown in 1938, one of 3 MVP seasons. Like, he was just the best hitter in his prime. He did play in a lot earlier day. He played in 1920s to 1940s, but either way. Yogi Berra, no. This is what I mean about this list. You have players like Yogi Berra here, but yet you're ranking behind the Manny Ramirez's, the Ichiros, the Big Poppies of the world behind him. And in what way is he better? Perhaps more than anyone in history. Is that why you have him at 39? Like, yeah, he came up with a bunch of quotes and everything that you can put for a caption on Instagram. But Yogi Berra, he's one of the better catchers of all time. But center of 10 championship Yankee clubs, dude. We're starting to sound like the freaking Jordan and LeBron debate right here. Championships are a team like accolade. In no way should that affect how good a player is looked at, like Yogi Berra, especially a game where you have 25 guys on the roster. Jackie Robinson's the one player on this list I'd be okay if they ranked highly solely to what he meant for not only baseball but the entire world. What he did was absolutely insane, even though his numbers, obviously because he had the Negro Leagues and everything, he only played 9 MLB seasons. I'm okay with him being ranked this high. Joe Morgan, though, dude, I wouldn't even rank Joe Morgan ahead of Jackie Robinson, who has way less seasons. Very overrated player, in my opinion. Tris Speaker played in the early 1900s, just like everybody else on that list. Very high average, good on base. Not a lot of home runs, though. Josh Gibson, though. He was one of those players in the Negro Leagues where he was just dynamic. He never even played in the MLB, and they have him ranked 35, which could be a little iffy, but if he was in the major leagues, we'd be talking about him for quite a bit. He hit 165 home runs, 725 RBIs, 374 average with a 458 on base. I don't know, I'm a big Josh Gibson guy. I think if he actually got a chance playing the MLB, he'd be really, really good. Pete Rose at 34, all-time hits leader. I'm okay with it. I think Ichiro should be right around this range too, kind of where I'd have him, but I'm okay with Pete Rose being there. Bob Gibson. See, this is what I mean. Gibson's great. But so is Sandy Koufax. But I don't believe they are better than Clayton Kershaw, who is ranked 20 spots lower than him. And Kershaw's career is not even done, and he's still pitching lights out. Mariano Rivera, all-time saves, leader 31, that's okay. This is where it gets bad, dude. Albert Pujols is at number 30. He's going to get over 700 home runs. One of, 4 players that have ever done it? 3 players? I think it's just, is it Hank Aaron and Barry Bonds? And Babe Ruth. So he'll be 4. And he's got over 2,000 RBIs, over 3,000 hits, almost a 300 batting average with a 375 on-base percentage, well about 920 OPS plus, almost 100 WAR, and he's at 30. Maybe it's because he just plays first base in DH, but he's at 30. And then you look here, Johnny Bench is ahead of him. In no way is Johnny Bench even close. Derek Jeter doesn't touch the same. Dude, Derek Jeter couldn't hold Albert Pujols' jockstrap. There is zero way Derek Jeter is better or even close to the level that Albert Pujols is. That is just so bad. Roberto Clemente, good, but he is once again not better than. They said they based this off WAR was one of the determining factors, players playing in their prime, all that shit. Pujols has about 100 WAR, and his prime was 300 batting average, 400 on base, 30 home runs, and 100 plus RBIs. I believe he did that 10 straight years. Nobody does that. And 75, 71, 94. Roberto Clemente is at least close, but these two ahead of him are 20 WAR behind what Albert Pujols is, bro. So bad. A-Rod, same thing. A-Rod is arguably a top 5 player of all time. He was 4 home runs short of 700 for his career. Like Pujols, over 2,000 RBIs, almost 300 average, 380 on base, a 117.5 WAR, dude. I don't get. If you don't want to rank them in the top 5 or whatever, at the very least, Pujols and A-Rod are top 15 players. There's no excuse for that. And now we got the fabulous top 25. Christy Mathewson at 25. It's hard to rank a player like this over Kershaw and Gibson and Koufax and Nolan Ryan, man. Like, he played so long ago versus just not a lot of good competition. Randy Johnson, in my eyes, him and Roger Clemens and Nolan Ryan and Kershaw are the best pitchers of all time. So I'd like to see him be a little bit higher. I think he has the record for most Cy Youngs with 7, I want to say, or at least around there, 6 or 7. And look at the strikeouts compared to innings pitched. Like, he was just electric with the big fastball, reaching triple digits, nasty slider. Ricky Henderson, all-time stolen base leader, 3,000 hits, is what it is. Tom Seaver was great, but once again, he's not better. Why is Tom Seaver ranked ahead of fucking Randy Johnson? And why is Cy Young in here? When they talked with Nolan Ryan, how he led in strikeouts, but downgrade him for lean and walks, yet Cy Young has the most losses of anyone all time. Not even close. He also has the most wins. Good ERA. But look at the innings pitch. 7,356 innings pitch. Only 2,800 strikeouts. Definitely a different time back then, but at some point you got to knock these guys back a little bit for the era they played in and kind of discredit some of these numbers. If you're getting a strikeout, one strikeout every 3 innings or so, there's no way Randy Johnson should be down here. No way Nolan Ryan should be down there. No way Kershaw should be down there, etc. Roger Hornsby, the dude could absolutely rake for second baseman. A lot of players on this list, though, that are probably a lot better than he is. I still think Manny Ramirez should be right around this range. I'd still say that probably Miggy and Frank Thomas are better than Rogers Hornsby too. But Roger Hornsby's still a hell of a player. Frank Robinson at number 19. 586 home runs, 1,800 RBIs. The dude absolutely mashed. His numbers remind me a lot of Manny Ramirez in terms of the high average, the high on-base percentage, ton of home runs. He just could absolutely hit. Plus, he played right field, wasn't a great right fielder, won a Triple Crown. He was good, but at this point, is Frank Robinson really this much better than Manny Ramirez? Mike Schmidt at 18, one of the best defenders over there at third base. Maybe Brooke Robinson, definitely better than him defensively, but he could also hit with the 550 home runs, 1,600 RBIs. Roger Clemens, dude, they gave no love to some of these pitchers. Roger Clemens is at 17. And in my opinion, I'd say Randy Johnson's the best all-time pitcher. Roger Clemens is probably right there at number 2. But 17 is just way too low, man. For what all he did in his career and everything. I don't know if they knocked him for steroids or anything. But even so, the 17th ranked player of all time that they're saying is not in the Hall of Fame. So let that sink in. Joe DiMaggio, he has the all-time hit streak. 325 average, 361 RBIs. But, he had a 79 WAR. We've seen multiple players like Pujols and A-Rod who have, 30 WAR more than this. I just don't get it, man. Mike Trout, honestly, I talked a lot about Harper, how he shouldn't be in the top 100 just because, he's only 28. His numbers don't kind of reach up to what a lot of the Hall of Fame players are. In terms of their prime, I'd say Mike Trout should probably be closer to the top 10. I think he's a little underrated. I know some people think he shouldn't even be on this list, but he's also, 29 years old, still has probably another, 8 years left of his career, I'd say. He's already got as much of a WAR as a lot of these players on this list. He's got 3 less WAR than Joe DiMaggio does. He's got Roger Clemens is way ahead of him. There are a lot of players on this list that we saw, though, that were in the 70s in terms of WAR. And Mike Trout still got a ways to go. Over 300 average, well over 400 on base. He already has 300 home runs. He's about halfway there at the 3,000 hit mark. And he just turned 30. So he's still got a little bit. But prime Mike Trout, I think, is a top 10 player. Greg Maddux. Greg Maddux is ahead of all those pitchers that I've been bitching about this entire video. He's ahead of Randy Johnson. He's ahead of Roger Clemens. He's ahead of Nolan Ryan. He's ahead of Kershaw, dude. In what fucking way is that the case? I don't get it. He finessed. He finessed like no other. He was dominant. He's probably a top 50 player, of course. But there are like 5 pitchers that I've named better. He better not be the number 1 pitcher on this list. I actually kind of want to know who is. Griffey, 13, is a fucking joke. Griffey at 13, dude. He's an icon. He's one of the most liked players. 284 average, 370 on base, 630 home runs. Like, there was nothing Griffey could not do. He's a top 10 player easily. Honus Wagner was really good, but he played in the early 1900s when, like I said, a lot of the players he was going against, a lot of the players on the field were literally fucking people they pulled off the streets. How can you rank a player this close to the top 10? Pedro Martinez, I'm assuming they have him as the number 1 pitcher, which Pedro Martinez is top 5 for me, or at least around there. Definitely not number 1 in my opinion, but it's a bad list, man. Stan, the man, Musial at number 10. Wow, they really ranked him high. Like, the dude could flat out hit like no other, so I'm okay with no, I'm not. I think he needs to be backed up. I'd like Griffey ahead of him a little bit more. I'd also A-Rod, Pujols. Like, Stan the man, probably around that 20 range for me personally. Walter Johnson is ahead of fucking... Dude, what the hell? Walter Johnson, 2.17 ERA. I swear they probably just looked at the ERA. It was just like, okay, this is the best pitcher of all time. They looked at the win-loss record. Best pitcher of all time. He's up there, of course, but when are we going to start talking more about strikeouts, man? WAR means nothing when you're playing in the early 1900s versus literal janitors. And plus, it was a different era. These pitchers pitched every single day, complete games. Like, he has 110 shutouts in his career. That's never going to be touched. Whatever, man, I'm over it. Barry Bonds at 8 is by far the biggest joke on this list. Almost 3,000 hits. All-time home run record. He had over 1,000 more walks than he did strikeouts. 162 WAR, 300 average, 444 on base, over 1,000 OPS in a 20-year career. He is the best player of all time. And like I said with Roger Clemens, even if you don't agree with that, the number 8 player on this list is not going to make the Hall of Fame after 10 years on the ballot. So let that sink in. Mickey Mantle is not better than Barry Bonds. Not even close. Lou Gehrig, definitely not better than Barry Bonds. Lou Gehrig's up there for me. I like Lou Gehrig a lot. I think he was amazing. Like, prime Lou Gehrig, Babe Ruth, that team was insane. Ted Williams arguably is one of the better, like, all-around hitters of all time. He hit for the average, almost had a 500 on-base percentage, great plate discipline, good with the power. He did a little bit of everything back in the day. Plus, he played in, like, the mid-1900s. So I can get away with a 3.44 average if you played in, like, the 1940s, 1960s. I can't do it if you played in the late 1800s, early 1900s, man. Like, Ty Cobb is not even close to a top 5 player. Not even close. He's borderline top 100. Like, that might be a little bit harsh, but, like, played in 1905 to 1928. He played 23 years of very scarce competition. Plus, if you're going to knock players like Barry Bonds or Roger Clemens because they use steroids or whatever, aren't going to influence whatever you want to say, read anything on Ty Cobb, and they will say he is one of the dirtiest players of all time. He would literally dive in the base at people's knees with his spikes facing up, trying to basically take people out. He was known as a dirty player. Over 4,000 hits is awesome, but once again, the competition wasn't nearly as good as it has been over the past 2 decades or so than it was in the 1900s, bro. Hank Aaron at number 3. I can definitely get behind that. Hank Aaron, obviously, whether you think Barry Bonds is the all-time home run record holder or not, Hank Aaron was right behind him. He held that record for a while. 2,300 RBIs. I believe he has the most RBIs all time. 3,700 hits, over 305 average. He had a 900 and what is that? Like 920-ish OPS, 930. Willie Mays at number 2. I don't agree with that. Willie Mays, top 10. He is not the second best player of all time. All around, he was amazing. He was fast. He could steal 660 home runs, hit for a high average, high on base. Like, he did everything on the baseball field. Maybe the best all-around player of all time, but in terms of just prime, the best player, I think nobody's better than Barry Bonds, but Willie Mays definitely not. And Babe Ruth is number one because of fucking course. 342 average, 474 on base, 714 home runs. Didn't get 3,000 hit, 162.7 WAR. You look at those numbers and you think, God damn, this guy, probably the best player of all time. But once again, like, how can you credit somebody who played against no competition? You put Babe Ruth against Jacob deGrom right now, Babe Ruth is striking out on 3 pitches. That's how much better the competition is. Plus, let's take a look. Like 162.7 WAR. You're putting him at number 1. Barry Bonds has the exact same WAR as Barry Bonds does. And he did it versus much harder competition, where we now have computers. We now have analytics that we can really dive into. Like, pitching coaches dive the fuck into the metrics and everything to see what people can't hit, what gives them issues, kind of what to do in certain situations. Babe Ruth, they didn't have that. And once again, he was going against strangers. There was so much more you had to prepare for in that bat now when Barry Bonds played than you did what Babe Ruth had to play. So overall, the list didn't get terribly, terribly bad till I'd say around the top 50. Manny Ramirez, Big Papi, Nolan Ryan, those guys all need to move up. Mickey. But whatever, man. Let me know what your guys' thoughts are in the comment section. Let me know what the biggest, like, what the fuck moment made you scratch your head a little bit was when you saw this list. There was a lot. It's pretty bad. But, hey, it's getting people talking. It's getting people to click on it. So, definitely from a media standpoint, they're doing their job. But let me know what your thoughts are in the comment section. I'll catch you guys later. Peace out.